very much. First time in Norway, very excited. Glad to be here. Bit disappointed in the weather, frankly. Wasn't what I was expecting. I looked like a right idiot at the airport with my ski jacket on, but moving on. I'm quite interested by this tagline here, the business of TV tech. And I'm very used to giving technical discussions like Ian's, but I'm going to be slightly out of my comfort zone today, and I'm going to tell you a bit of real-world experiences in this area, and as Eric just mentioned, some of the danger zone that we could be walking into unless we're really bright on it. So Perform Group, you may not know the brand. It's very much historically a B2B company involved in sports rights. DAZN is a brand that's been launched in the last 18 months, which you may have come across. It's big in Germany, Japan, and Canada, and is growing around the world quite quickly. I'm going to rattle through these slides because time is a little bit short. I'm going to play a very, very quick video, give you a little bit of background on what we do.
Okay, ready?
The system broken, the schools closed, the prisons open. We ain't got nothing to lose. Everybody, we rollin'. Everybody, we rollin'. With some light-skinned girls.
The higher ranking.
And this white man world, we the ones chosen.
Wait a minute, for just $9.99.
Get something going, fellas, you know what I mean?
Doesn't get much better than that.
There you go, that's DAZN. I don't know if you've come across that brand before, but it is sort of marching across the globe in a pretty impressive way. The plan for DAZN is to try and support as many devices as possible. They've highlighted a bunch of devices which are key to us. Phones, tablets, smart TVs, game consoles, and set-top boxes. These are our key ones. There are other ones that we're trying to support as well. We've really launched in Japan, really quite big offices, launched in a big way. And the most important thing in our entire technology stack is really the fans, the sports fans. And I mean that in a really serious way. The company is run by sports fans. The management are all crazy football fans. And they're really trying to produce products that fans really, really engage with. And I make that point because our customer is the fan. I've got to be very, very clear on that. And I think sometimes when we're talking about sports rights and dealing with some of these very, very big sports rights, for example, in Japan, you can see we've got global sports rights plus local sports rights. When we're talking to rights holders, we're talking about trying to get their customer directly in front of that sport. And I think in some parts in the past, it's the customer's been the broadcaster, and we've been a bit of a barrier between reaching the fans. And so supporting the right devices, supporting the right business model, trying to get the right product together has been absolutely key. So we've identified exactly what's right for Japan, identified what's right for the DAC region, and also for Canada, and produce these quite tailored offerings. The question is here, the future, and how to build on our stack and to look at the technology and decide what is the right direction for Perform Group and the right direction for DAZN. And this is where I want to pause and just have a quick revisit about technology itself. And I love TV. I love TV technology. It's been my thing pretty much since I left school. And I asked myself, what's the favorite bit of TV technology that I can think off the top of my head? And the answer is black and white TV. Now, let me explain that. It's not black and white TV itself. That's just the first TV, brilliant invention as it was. But in the UK, certainly, there was that transition moment when it went to colour TV. And that was a remarkable invention, because they had a completely blank sheet of paper and they could have made colour TV behave in any way they wanted. But they took a concept that it had to work on the existing television sets. That was a fundamental thing. And what they didn't do was create a second colour transmission. They had a single transmission that both colour TV sets and black and white TV sets could understand. And that was a critical moment, and that's a fundamental design in their on their design sheet, and a requirement from the broadcaster onto the technology itself. And we're going to revisit that, because I think that's something that we might sometimes forget when we see the next big thing. No offense, Ian. I'm sure the new codecs are brilliant, and I'm sure UHD will be great, and wide color gamut will be great, and I'm sure 4K will be great, but we have to remember whether, from my point of view, what do the sports fans want? What do they need it to do? And I do sometimes a little bit concerned that we sort of lose track of that, particularly when it comes to the scale of what we're doing. So we're doing 50 live events at any one time. We don't have sports channels. Well, we do, but we're not built around sports channels. We're built around live events, and our peak concurrency is 50. We have them in 3 formats, so 3 different head ends to support all the devices you saw on the previous slide. So we've got Dash, we've got HLS, and we've got Smooth. Yes, we have Smooth. We have 10 regional variants, so we're looking at 150 times 10 to get that feature set to run. So looking at 150 times 10, 1,500, and then on top of that, we've got 6 different profile configurations to cater for devices that only support certain functions of frame sizes or bit rates. So you're looking at 9,000 different, what we call outlets, to make 50 channels work. This is looking horrendous. And the problem is, with growth and new features and new things that comes along, is that only gets worse and worse and worse. Now, I'm not going to have a lot of time to really talk about this. I have lots to say, and if you can corner me over a coffee or a beer later, I'm sure we can chat about this. But we have got a problem with legacy. I did a little bit of research about Norway, and you have less of a problem with legacy than the UK. We definitely have a problem in the UK. I found out that I think I wrote the number down here, our black and white TVs in the UK are licensed different to colour TVs. We still have a dedicated black and white TV license. It's a third of the cost to the compulsory colour license that you have in the UK. So there are still, believe it or not, 8,000 licenses. It's a fact. You can look it up on the internet. You've got 8,000 people still watching colour TV, and we're still supporting those formats. We nobble ourselves by making ourselves compatible to the past all the time, and it slows down innovation. In the same way, if we innovate faster, we alienate faster as well. We have to start dropping things. And trying to set that slider in the business is a challenge. I think it's something we are either all beginning to face now as you sort of emerge into the OTT market, or if you're already deeply embedded in the OTT market, it's slightly worse, because you've got an established consumer base that you're going to have to, at some point, make some pretty hard decisions on. Broadcasters generally are used to working with legacy. I'm going to just rattle down some of these things here that might ring a bell. So interlaced, again, brilliant technology, a fabulous idea, a superb way of reducing the sample size of a video picture. We're still carrying it around in the UK. Maybe I am getting the sense that Norway is a lot more progressive than the UK. I know you've already dropped the FM broadcast, and I salute you for it. In the UK, we have problems doing that kind of thing. In the UK, FM is so deeply entrenched with Radio 4 and the Archers, I think it would be a bigger deal than Brexit if we got rid of the FM. We're still broadcasting SD. That's a point. Again, I've read that some Nordic countries have set 2020 as a date when they're going to stop broadcasting SD. Again, more power to you. Fantastic. 3D, we don't even want to talk about that. It's just embarrassing. Flash, we're still carrying Flash around. Flash, although everyone wants to see that deprecated, we are still definitely carrying it around for a while. Smooth Stream, it won't go away quickly. It won't go away neatly and tidily. We have to carry on carrying it. Dash and HLS, very, very similar. HLS is Apple's design. It has a very set formulation and it's well supported. Dash has a much, much, much bigger brief, way more flexible, codec agnostic. It's DRM agnostic, sounds great on paper, but unfortunately that paper is so big, we're finding that some broadcasters just read the first few sheets. Some television player manufacturers don't go into the real detail of Dash and support it as solidly as maybe they should. We've got differences in DRM. We've got 4K or HD, and that's a topic I really love to talk about. I'm sure anybody else here, slightly engineering focused, will also have opinions on 4K versus HD in the real world. 264, 265 VP9. I haven't put AV1 on here because I think AV1 potentially is just too far forward for performance zone because the live version is probably nearly a decade away, I don't know. I mean, it does look quite a long way off. Dolby Vision or Log Gamma HDR, quite interesting this one here when it comes to backward compatibility. And Atmos or MPEG-H 3D, so a lot to discuss there. I've always put this in almost every presentation I do because that's one of my favorite XCDs. It's competing standards. 14, ridiculous. We need to develop one universal standard that covers everyone's use cases. Yeah! So the situation now is there are 15 competing standards. And we're very much in that world where we really have lots and lots of standards. Standards aren't the problem. It's trying to decide which of those suit our customers better. And also, there's a conversation that perhaps we need to think about a little bit stronger. And this is one reason why I'm so excited to come to an event like this and talk to both broadcasters and talk to suppliers and manufacturers, is because maybe the way we communicate isn't necessarily good enough. Maybe our requirements aren't clearly being heard, or maybe we're just not even speaking clear enough. Because I think our requirements aren't necessarily about how big the video picture is, or how big the color gamut is, or what the dynamic range is of the picture. Maybe they're not our real requirements. Maybe our real requirements is be more standard, be more consistent in the standard, be a better standard. Here's some questions. These are questions that maybe we can discuss over dinner and beer later on. But I really have this little thing here, which I realize is something that we do currently. We either duplicate our head end to make something work on more than one device. So I create a single stream, then I duplicate it to work on multiple things in the same way that we didn't do with color TV. We transform, so I take a single thing from my head end and I transform it to make it work on something else. Or we can innovate and we can try and create and invent a new thing altogether that solves multiple problems. And the last thing we have here is eliminate. And I've just realized that could have been a much better mnemonic, and I could have come up with diet if I really thought about it, but I just thought about it just now, so I didn't do it. But if I rearrange these letters to diet, maybe that's what we need to do as an industry, just lose a little bit of fat. So these are the things I want to just end on, which is talk more about how we end of life a service. And I really feel that quite strongly. So as soon as we start talking about bringing in something new, theorize anything you like, say 4K, we also have to think about how it's going to end, how we're going to remove it from the whole sort of ecosystem that we're building. Otherwise, we find ourselves carrying it around forever in the same way we carry around some things already. Also, we have to think about the timescales involved. Interlaced TV, SD, black and white, these things have been around for decades, and they really hadn't changed very much for decades. But now we're talking about things coming out at a life cycle of 2, 3, 5 years. Really, really quick turnaround. And if we're not thinking about 5 years ahead, how we're going to remove something, how on earth are we going to move on? We're just going to get bigger and bigger and fatter and fatter. I want to put an emphasis on backward compatibility, so things can just exist a little bit longer without having a detrimental effect on the size of the ecosystem that we're building. And also acknowledge something else about scalability and how things scale, how platforms scale. and also prioritize these things. So rather than just always talk about picture quality, picture size, frame rate, think about things like how does something scale is really just as important. And also ensure that compliancy of standards is recognized at just the same level of importance as a feature itself. So there you go, I rattled off extra fast. I hope that was interesting, and back to you, Eric.